All right, we're going to be starting in about 30 seconds,
Great.
and I'm very excited. Thank you, everybody, for joining today for Who Rescued Whom with Adam Clark, who's a human-animal attachment expert. And I am Diana Klein. Some of you guys might know me. I am the creator of the Max's Healing Hearts community. And although it takes a village, and also the founder of Max's Helping Paws Foundation. So we wanted to do this today when Maximilian, who you guys know, my dog passed away. That depth of pain that I experienced was unlike anything I had ever known in my life. I mean, nothing compared to it. And feeling better seemed pretty much impossible. And I know a lot of you agree, but not only did I have this grief, but also a little bit of embarrassment when I would talk to people about my lack of desire to get out of bed, my lack of desire to speak to anybody, and to basically have to admit it was because my relationship with Max was so deep that I could barely function. And it was hard to explain that to people. Anyway, so Adam understands this completely as he does this day in, day out, and he will help us all navigate our feelings and experiences with this. And I hope you'll find it useful. Adam.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for the invite, and thank you for everyone that tunes in either now or later. I think this is just going to be a conversation about, why we're so attached to our pets and what builds that bond so strongly. Just a little bit about me is I'm a contributor for psychologytoday.com. I have an article column called Animal Attachment, and I write primarily about endings and transitions as it has to do with our pets. I'm also an adjunct professor, and my focus is all on the psychology of our attachment and why our grief is so powerful and so real. So Diana and I today wanted to come together because she's cultivated such a beautiful community of people that have experienced loss, and some that are facing anticipatory grief and loss, and some that are just curious about it. But, chances are if you're logged in here today, you love your pet and you love your animals. We want to honor that. So we'd love to hear your comments. And if you have any questions about the bond or about the psychology behind it, it's absolutely, there's no question that's a strange question. That's for sure.
Great. So, do you want to kind of just dive into just the overall the intensity of the human-animal relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. So, having a relationship with our pets is really different and interesting. And a lot of pet lovers, animal lovers will tell you that, they have a very strong bond with their pet. And a lot would say that it's even stronger than immediate family members. And that pet can be a surrogate child to them, can be a very connective factor with maybe a spouse that they've lost. And, there's some real psychological and real reasons for that. And one of the primary things is that we're caregivers, and being a caregiver sort of builds an attachment. If we don't support our pet, if we don't feed them and let them out and take care of them and show them love, they don't get those things. And so a lot of times, most of us, we wake up and our routine immediately starts with feeding our dog or our cat or our bird or that kind of thing. It revolves around them. It's not focused on us. And that every day builds our attachment. One of the other things that is crucial is that we don't have the complex relationship with our pets as we do with humans. Sometimes humans hurt us intentionally or unintentionally. Humans are complicated. They've got baggage and backgrounds, and we're trying to figure it out. Pets don't do that. We're mini celebrities when we come home. One of the things that I come and say that I'm going to get in trouble for after this from my girlfriend is that if you were to take your dog and your partner and lock them both in the trunk of your car, who would be happy to see you when you got back? You get a divorce or separated from your partner, but your dog would be super excited and like, hey, I got locked into a cool space. And that sort of speaks about the lack. It's just not complicated. And a lot of people need that.
That absolutely makes sense. one of the things that I've heard people say, and this may throw you off a little bit, but in the community, something that I've heard people say many times is, I have both children and pets. I have lost both children and pets. Sure. And yet the loss of my pet was so much, it was equal or worse in some cases, but definitely equal. I mean, that's sort of this argument, right? How can that possibly be?
Sure. We have this undercurrent in society that we're not supposed to grieve when we lose a pet, that it's somehow wrong or we're supposed to feel guilt about it. The reality is that those are messages that a lot of times happen when we're young, and they're underneath the current culture, and they're sort of very unconscious. There's nothing that says a pet is supposed to mean less to you than a human child. And again, it just goes back to the complexity of a relationship that we have with humans. We can have a little bit of anger maybe towards our children, and there's complicated factors, and there's a lot of just pieces there that correlate to make our relationship. There's a lot of families that fall apart and break up, and all because of complications. And it's amazing that human beings can communicate at all, because it's all what we say, what we think we heard, how we expressed it. But with our pets, again, it's just this true ability to connect and to be with us that's very nurturing. They're just looking for affection and love, and they're giving that to us. And they're also great teachers of showing us what it means to live moment by moment and not look farther than that. One of the things that I talk about is that I don't believe that our pets can fear death. Now, they fear pain and suffering, but they're not like us, and they don't sit on the couch and wonder, when will I die? Or is it going to be painful? Or let's do this to avoid thinking about our death, because they're too busy loving on us and living in the moment to care.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I often say is, and hear is, loss is loss, grief is grief, that it doesn't matter what it is about. A divorce, it's the loss of something, a divorce, an eviction, a pet. I mean, is that how you look at it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I even say to my graduate social workers, the students in my classes, I say that celebrations are even loss. If you look at a wedding, something that's supposed to be a complete celebration, it's actually the loss of the previous identity of the two people that are coming together. And so you have situations where people grieve heavily on their wedding day, and it's not because they're not excited. It's because they're grieving their old sense of identity and looking at their new one. And so when you look at that from attachment to our pets, we can't move through an experience with them, whether we're facing an illness or diagnosis, or an actual physical death, or they run away, and that's a loss, but not a concrete loss, which can be even more complicated and sometimes traumatic. It's still, we have to figure out how we're going to go through that experience, and we never come out that experience on the other side not being changed. And if I can pick on you a little bit, you took Max's legacy and created a group of 28,000 people, and you established a non-for-profit that gives back. You took your grief and you funneled it into a positive outlet that has helped hundreds and thousands of people. And not everyone can do that, but people process through in their own way, and they have to figure out what they're going to do with that energy and sort of their new sense of self.
Very good point. Very good point. And thank you for saying those things. I had to, right? I had to do something with it. I do want to talk a little bit about anticipatory grief, as you mentioned. And that's, there's, and again, I'm not the expert, you are, but there's the grief in when I found out that Max had cancer, in my mind, I was already just horrifically grieving. I mean, I was going through this process, and I imagine so many people out there, as soon as they get the news, it's like a death. And so I just want you to address that, and and talk about maybe what people can do, and what that means, and anything else that you think.
Yeah, sure. So anticipatory grief, is like you said, hearing that news firsthand and sort of getting that information that my pet just got diagnosed with maybe a couple months to live, or that there's a cancer and we can't treat it, or maybe we can, but I can't afford the treatment. And so I can't pursue that road. So, that anticipatory grief is sort of facing an upcoming physical death or facing a change. And it comes just as powerful as an actual physical death happens, because we're trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? And sometimes it's even harder because our pet is still there and they don't know that they just received this diagnosis, but they pick up our grief and our sort of presentation and our energy because they're really sensitive to that. So they might get scared, or they might get nervous, or they might be like, what's going on with my mom or dad? But so, planning is really important, and asking questions with the veterinarian community. But really, in anticipatory grief, even though you're grieving, you have to remember your pet is still there, and to try to make the most of every single day. Even though that's hard, making sure to spend time with them, and making sure to take them on walks and engage with them, making sure to remind them that they've loved, making into a celebration.
Sorry. That was bound. That was bound to happen. And so I guess maybe the message that I'm getting is, your pet's the one that's having the problem. Suck it up, and basically don't let them kind of know. I mean, I did that. I was crying all the time, and I feel terrible about that because the last days are supposed to be the best days, and so it's a battle. It's a battle. So I get it.
I would say more than a battle, I think it's a balance, because we do have to still express our emotions, because I say every time you express your emotions, you sort of heal, you move through that process. And so you have to do that. And our pets are gracious enough to give us that space because, again, they don't know any better and they live every day with us. But we have to be taking care of ourselves, because otherwise we're not there for them. And that's the sort of whole point of this relationship, is that give and take.
True, which brings me to my question about pet parenting. So again, a lot of what I'm talking about comes from conversations that I've had with this community. And I hear a lot of, how do I know if I'm doing the right thing for them? How do I know? They can't speak. How, as a pet parent, can I make sure that I am honoring their wishes? That's a biggie. I would love for you to address that.
Good question, too. So we second guess ourselves so quickly. And as soon as it comes to a stressful situation, most pet parents think that they don't know the answer. And they feel like, I can't make this decision, whether it's a decision of euthanasia or whether it's a decision of treatment planning or next steps in their pet's life. But the reality is, you're the best advocate for your pet. Yeah, you can talk to the veterinarian and get their input. That's really important. Yes, you can talk to understanding friends. That's also important. But ultimately, you're the one that has spent every day with this pet. You know what they like. You know that their favorite foods. You know that they have a friend down the street. You know their intrinsic nature. And so for an example of that, if I was facing bringing my pet in every day to a veterinary clinic, and my pet loved going and would wag its tail, and, if it was a dog, greet everybody with kisses and just be so ecstatic to get in that car and go for treatment, well, then that bumps up my decision process of, yeah, this is a great thing because my pet really enjoys it. But if, on the other hand, I have a dog who is terrified and shaking and dragging and pushing against you, not wanting to enter that hospital because it's terrified of the sights and the smells and the treatment, well, then your pet's also telling you something right there, that maybe even though this treatment might be effective, it might not be appropriate for them because it's such a scary experience for them in that moment. Balancing it out with your knowledge of, is this temporary fear for my pet, or is it sort of permanent? Like, how much is my pet reacting? If there's a little fear that we can work on and the treatment might be life-saving, sure. But if it's absolutely terrifying fear, I might suggest not putting a pet through that, especially if it's facing a terminal diagnosis, if that makes sense.
Okay, no, it does. And so I'm just wondering how pet parents, pet owners, pet parents would manage that, right? If they needed to go back to the veterinary practice for ongoing treatments to manage that. I mean, how as a parent could I deny that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. it's then looking at it is, are you making decisions for yourself or are you making decisions for your pet? Because if you're stepping into sort of your pet's paws and looking at it as they only know the present moment and the situation that you put them in, you know, on the level of fear, what does that look like? There's so many different circumstances that it's hard to sort of blanket it. But really a couple points of advice is to really trust your gut and you know what the best interest of your pet is. You know, seek guidance from other people, but ultimately step back and look at it yourself. Keeping a journal and a log of our pet's quality of life is really important because we can be so close as pet parents that we can't see a decline, or we couldn't see things that if someone from the outside were to look to say, well, you know, they haven't been greeting you at the door and they used to, and they look a little bit more sad and they miss every other meal. We might just get pushing that envelope and sort of not seeing that. And so it's helpful to keep a log or a journal of where they're at and what they're going through.
And then just to expand on that thought, the making the right decisions. So when it was time to take Max, there was nothing else we could do, he literally pranced into the veterinarian's office. And he was generally afraid of the vet in general. And to watch him go in there, is that something that I could sort of find peace with and say, okay, I read the signs and I did the right thing? Is that one of those ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they speak to us every day. It's just not verbal. You know, most of the time barks tell us certain things, but we can't really, you know, talk to them. And we doubt ourselves so quickly when it comes to making hard decisions. And part of it is we're overwhelmed and we don't want to make the wrong decision. But what I tell a lot of people that come to me for pet loss counseling is that there is no such thing as a wrong decision, because once you've made a decision, that's the only one that could be made. And now we move forward from where we're at. You can't second guess, because thinking back, it could have been better and it could have been worse. Thinking and second guessing causes nothing but guilt and pain. And psychologically, it's just a cycle of suffering that we give ourselves. So once we make a decision, that's the only decision that could be made. There's no right or wrong.
Are there any little tricks that you advise people, or tips or tricks of sort of addressing that guilt? Because I know it hits a lot of us, of us. Is there anything that we can kind of do to...
Yeah, guilt is one of the most difficult things. And in making a decision like euthanasia, it's one of the strongest motivating factors. Guilt can be very negative, and it can tell us things like, I killed my pet, or why did I do this? Or I should have got them in for treatment sooner, or I should have known better. But let's say your golden retriever was acting fine and playing, and then one day they have a limp. You bring them in and they're riddled with metastatic cancer. Well, you had no way to know that. So beating yourself up in that guilt of not making a decision sooner is just giving suffering to yourself. And truly, that's all it is. So with guilt, sometimes you can combat it with distracting yourself from it if it's really overwhelming, placing your intention and your focus on something else, whether it's exercise, whether it's sort of meditation, whether it's positive, you know, friends, or even spending the moments you might have with your pet. And then the other way to sort of handle guilt, if it's not distraction, is to try to step back and look at it from a non-emotion perspective. In the beginning phases, after
easier said than done, by the way. Easier said than done.
All the things I say are a lot easier said than done. It's difficult. And especially right after losing a pet, there's no timeline on grief. So some people, it takes them 4 months to sort of move through and start feeling better. Some take 6, 8, 12. There's no timeline. And anyone who tells you there's a timeline is wrong. So it's different for every person. But right in the immediate phase, when you're still going through that raw pain, feeling guilt is sort of natural. So it's just balancing the amount of guilt you feel and how badly that's infringing on your life. If you can't get out of bed after 8 months because you blame yourself, well, then are you trying to hold on to the pain, or are you trying to hold on to the memory of your pet? Because chances are, if you asked your pet if they wanted you to hold on to that pain, they would say, heck no, I want you to play fetch. right? So they don't want you to hurt.
And I will tell you that does resonate because, and I think a lot of folks in the audience would agree that sometimes you hang on to the pain because that is literally all that you have left.
Sure.
Right?
If I don't hurt, it never mattered. If I don't feel pain,
Yes.
I never loved my pet. But in reality, the exact opposite is true, because you don't have to feel pain to have a memory. I say when you move through grief, you start living the memory of your pet. You take the lessons that your pet taught you and you share them and you live them every day. If your pet taught you to be a little kinder to strangers, you work on that every day. And that's living the memory of your pet.
That's a good point. And so just to get back on the topic of the relationship itself. So I've heard you talk about just the partnership, and there are a lot of, and we put this in the description, is that there are a lot of naysayers who, not that they don't love animals, not that they don't love you, but that they just can't wrap their head around a relationship of this type, of this depth. Can you just talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's an important point. We live in this sort of dichotomy where a lot of people tuning into this will probably believe that their pets are sentient beings, members of the family. They have rights as humans would. They're not less than, they're equal to us. But unfortunately, I can go to the nearest mall and I can buy a pet that's most likely from a puppy mill. And so buying something in that manner is telling me that I own it, that it's property. And yet we also rescue and adopt and say they're sentient to us, they're important to us. Those two messages don't mix well. And even from a young age, we can get those mixed messages that come into our psyche and impact us. And you're also going to have the sort of old time or old fashioned where the dog is chained up in the backyard and that's just where they are for their entire lives. And so I think that is changing, but it's not quite there yet. Just as there's people that have a lot of judgment and hatred in the world, you're going to see people that don't think pets do any justice, or maybe they had a really negative experience and that opinion comes out of fear.
I get it. But on a day-to-day basis, there are sort of those of us, and I am very fortunate to have a spouse that totally understands the depth of emotion and let me stay in bed for a month.
Sure.
But there are those who, have spouses that just don't share that thinking. It's a way of thinking. And so I just want to give some advice, if you can, on how to still sort of maintain those relationships, but deal with that difference.
Right. And in that sense, a lot of people grieving the loss of their pet hear the words, "It was just a dog, get over it." And yet you never hear the words, "It was just grandma, get over it." Or you never hear the words, "It was just your wife, get over it." So that's the important piece there. And that's when, sort of coming in and healing the sort of that cocooning factor is important. If you're grieving the loss of something, of a pet that your neighbor or friend just doesn't understand, trying to get them to understand when you're in the grief process is like nails on a chalkboard. It's going to add more harm than good. So when you can, having those conversations like, I wish you could support me in this, but since you can't, I need to step away for some time. And when I'm feeling better, we can talk again. Or trying to avoid that topic altogether. When you're grieving, you need to surround yourself with special people that can really support it. And grief itself is scary for a lot of people. Why do we say, "I'm so sorry"? Well, what do we say? What are we supposed to say? How do we support somebody going through pet loss? One of the things that I say when talking to a friend that's lost a pet is never to say, "I understand what you're going through." Even if you've experienced an immense pain and loss of a pet, you don't understand what that person exactly is going through. And it also strips the power away from them. It doesn't allow them to say to you what they're going through. So instead, just changing the words around to, "I can't imagine how painful that must be for you. Can you tell me what you're going through?" And that gives them a little bit of power in a situation that might feel completely powerless to hear what they're going through and to just accept it and to be there.
I never even thought about that, actually. I mean, I didn't do much talking, But so, okay. And that's very helpful, I think. What about outside of grief? So when there isn't grief, on just day-to-day attachment with, our cats, our dogs, and just the looks and the comments and how do I maintain a friendship with this friend when I know that they don't feel what I feel?
Well, why do you want to be friends with them if they don't like pets?
Well, they may have some other redeeming qualities, but I guess if they're not in love with pets, then they should just be done, right?
Well, yeah. So it's like, not everybody likes kids, but if they're a friend, they should still share in your life. So even if maybe you don't bring your dog to their events, and so you sort of limit that connection and you just don't go there, but you continue living your life, because our relationships shouldn't strip us of something that we love. Sort of for a non-pet example, when my relationship started blossoming, my girlfriend's in the other room right now watching hockey, and you can probably see these, I didn't understand that, but that away from her, I want to encourage that. So in friends, if they don't understand our connection with pets, and that's okay, they don't need to like it, but they need to be respectful that we love them. And if they don't want us to talk about our pets, well, maybe we should have conversations about what that friendship looks like, or redefining it. Or maybe they're just your friend you go out with once a month for coffee and you just have small talk with.
Is there something, and the answer very well maybe no, but is there a sentence or two that I can say that people listening to this and watching this can say that will make us not seem crazy, but just compassionate and wonderful? Is there something that we can say to those people about our attachment?
And that sort of makes me look at, so from a worldview perspective, we love our pets, and we sort of, protect them and cherish them, but only so many animals fit into that spectrum, right? Usually cats, dogs, sometimes more exotic, horses. But when you look at pigs, not as many people consider them pets, and yet some do. There's a lot of people with pigs as pets that consider them like dogs. They have the same intelligence level. They can, on average, 22 tricks, but it's just the viewpoint of them that we have. So, as for an exact sentence, it really depends on a lot of factors and what that relationship looks like. But telling people I care about my pet just as if it was my child, and maybe you don't want to talk about my pet or don't understand my attachment to them or my relationship. Why don't you ask me what they do for my life? Such a support and what they give to me. Or maybe you should spend a day with them and see what it's like to spend time with them, and your attitude might change. And I notice a lot of people that come to me that really distrust or don't like animals have had somewhere down the line a negative experience. Maybe they got bit, maybe they got scratched. And a lot of times that comes from just lack of knowledge. So if you can introduce to them a pet that shows them love and affection, I mean, that's a win-win. But I think the last point there is ultimately acceptance, that if they don't want to share that relationship as I do, that's okay. And if we can make that work, great. And if not, we have to sort of come to an understanding.
Do you think it's okay for people to say, my cat, this is my daughter? I've heard people talk about I can't think of what that phrase, but if they're like the grandparent of a dog or a cat. Right. I mean, what do you think about when I say Max was my son? What's that about?
Yeah, that language, like, this is my two-legged kiddo and this is my four-legged kiddo, right? Or three-legged. When you look at the size of the spectrum, someone who's lost a human child might say, you can't understand what I went through with that. You can't relate to that. And there can be some anger there. But I would say losing a pet, the impact and the attachment and the love that we share doesn't have to be different than that. People try to classify, and it again goes from that sort of ego place that humans are top of the food chain and they're the best and everything else is underneath us. But if everything was a circle, if they had the same attitude toward an elephant as they did a fellow human, I think there might be a lot less murdering and stuff in the world. But in addition to that, we would not classify pets as less than, and combined with being caregivers to them, their love, their unconditional love for us, their support for us, that they teach us to be mindful every day and live moment to moment. They share so much joy with us, and they're there with us through our hard times. They are the rocks in our lives a lot of times to help us through. And they're so important because they don't talk back. They don't try to tell us how to get through it. They just let us get through it. And they can sit with us in that messy place in our lives, and they don't judge us. So, non-judgmental love, I don't know how you couldn't be as attached to your pet as you would be a human child if you really understand that bond. And I think the stronger thing is to, develop that attachment, even though it might be painful to lose them in the end, as it is any relationship.
Unconditional is the word that we always talk about. It's truly, truly, truly unconditional. Mm-hmm. And with that, so Adam, did I get it right? So Adam's Facebook page is at Pet Loss Education. Uh-huh. And I would encourage you, he's also the writer of many of the blog posts. He's a writer, as you mentioned, with Psychology Today, and has some fantastic articles that we always post on the community page. And we appreciate your time and look forward to the next one.
Yeah,
Thanks
absolutely.
so much, Adam.
Yeah, and thank you.
Bye, everyone.